Guys, this is your host Mitchell from Fight Pass with Mitch, and we're back for season 2, and we have a really fun episode that we're doing. We're covering all the fighters from Georgia, not the state, the country. Now let's get into it. As you know, Georgia is a small country in the Caucasus Mountain regions. Obviously, one of the first Georgian fighters to ever enter the UFC was in 2015, and his name is Levan Makashvili. He's a Georgian fighter that entered on May 16th, 2015. He was the first Georgian fighter in UFC history. As you guys know, the UFC was founded in 1993, so it took a long time for the Georgians to actually enter the UFC. Currently, this is a very interesting fact, there is only 5 Georgian fighters on the UFC roster, and we are going to be covering them all today. As you know, Georgia as a country has a very small population of 3.7 million people, and they have this delicious national dish called khachapuri. Yes, repeat after me, khachapuri. So this is a very delicious bread with cheese and egg, and you mix it all together. It's not good for weight cutting, but we love it and we love to enjoy it. So as you know, Georgia, Kazakhstan, Ukraine, the representation of all Georgian fighters in the UFC has greatly expanded over the last couple of years. And at the moment, we have, out of the 5, Merab Dvalishvili, Giga Chikadze, Roman Dolidze, Ilia Topuria, and Guram Kutateladze. So we're going to start with one of our favorites, and that's Giga Chikadze. He is a UFC featherweight contender. He was very famously known in his kickboxing career. Giga participated under the Glory banner, and he was one of the biggest kickboxing promotions in the world. Therefore, after he transitioned into MMA, he took his great striking skills and did extremely well. He was on a massive winning streak before he had a loss to Calvin Kattar. There was supposed to be a fight upcoming, but he got injured and he had to be on the sideline, and we're continuing patiently waiting for Giga's return. He trains out of Vegas. He is one of the amazing strikers in the UFC featherweight division. He just has to lock up a little bit on his wrestling, but I do believe he will be fighting for the featherweight title one day. One of our next rising, most contending stars, and probably the one to be next in line for a championship fight, is Merab Dvalishvili. He is the highest ranked athlete out of all the Georgians in the UFC. He's a bantamweight. He trains with the champion Aljamain Sterling in Long Island with the in Law MMA Sarah Longo fight team. He is a machine. That is his nickname. He dominates his opponents on the ground. He fights 5 rounds, 3 rounds, it doesn't matter. He cannot be stopped. His cardio is one of the best in the UFC, in my opinion. And the next opponent that he is going against is the former champion, and that's Peter Yan. I believe this matchup of Georgia and Russia on March 11th is going to be a spectacular fight. These guys have already squared up on each other in Abu Dhabi when Aljamain Sterling was going to fight TJ Dillashaw. These two are on a road and a mountain to meet. Obviously, you all know Peter Yan had a really tough loss to Sugar Sean O'Malley in Abu Dhabi. So Peter Yan is on the chopping block. I do believe that Merab Dvalishvili has all the tools that he needs to take on this monster of a Russian. And on March 11th, you are going to remember Merab's name. And then after Aljamain Sterling completes his career and will pass on the torch to Merab, and he will be the champion of the bantamweight division. So you guys really have to remember his name, the Machine, out of Long Island, Law MMA, the next biggest star in the bantamweight division. One of my favorite names that next coming up is a guy who's very interesting. Not only is he Georgian, but he's also has of Spanish descent. and that is Ilia Topuria. He's a 24-year-old mixed martial artist with a background of Greco-Roman. It's absolute crisp boxing. There is very few that can really match up against him. I really see this 24-year-old as the complete package to become a champion in the UFC. He has the wrestling, he has the striking, and he has absolute massive knockout power. As you know, he had a huge win over Jai Herbert in March in 2002 in London, and then he just went against the really highly touted Bryce Mitchell, where he finished him in an arm triangle. As you guys know, Bryce Mitchell was a massive wrestler, and Topuria made of light work with him. He out-wrestled him, and he absolutely mauled him in every aspect of the game. Like I said, there's not many Georgian fighters, but the ones that are all rostered are absolute killers. And this guy is on a huge trajectory to the top. He is super exciting to watch, and he backs up everything he says. Doesn't talk shit, and every time he enters that cage, he performs. He delivers, and he excites. And I think that's why his fan base keeps growing and growing. Not only does he have the support of the Georgian community, a lot of the Spanish community of Spain really support the Matador. He is absolutely a star in the making, and he's very composed, and I really enjoy watching him. He is so exciting. His next fight, he obviously called out Brian Ortega. He's currently ranked number 9 in the UFC, and there's just not a lot of people who want to get into the octagon with him. I think him against Ortega would be a fantastic fight. Obviously, Ortega is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, but like I said, that does not scare a guy like Ilia Topuria. Nobody on the ground and nobody standing up. He doesn't fear anything. He will fight the best boxers. He will fight the best submission artists. He is the complete package. So I really hope the UFC can set up Topuria versus Brian Ortega in the near future, or give him a highly ranked opponent so he can really show his talent. I think the best way to see how good Topuria is to give him the best that's out there, because he wants it. He's not hiding from nobody, and it's all about making the biggest names for him to fight in the octagon. One of the next guys that I'm going to bring up is a guy who trains with Khamzat Chimaev. He actually trains in Sweden. He's also a Georgian killer. He fights in the light heavyweight division. His name is Kutateladze Guram, and he's very exceptional Swedish-Georgian performance. In October 20, he engaged in combat with Mateusz Gamrot, which eventually Gamrot won by decision. Guram and Khamzat Chimaev are very close friends, and they share a gym. Guys, this guy is also on a big trajectory. Guram is a very exciting fighter. He's had a few bad breaks, but it just to show that being in the UFC shows how good he is. And his training partner, Khamzat Chimaev, is obviously a freaking machine. He would not keep anybody in his camp who is not as tough as nails. This shows, and I love how all these Georgian guys are scattered. I can't imagine to actually get them all in one gym. I've seen some videos where they've actually trained together with Topuria in Spain, that they actually invited them to do a training video, and I would love for these guys to continue to actually train together and possibly open up their own gym to get more Georgian fighters to come up and enjoy and spread their wings in the UFC, because they are super talented. The next Georgian fighter that I'm going to bring up is actually one of the most creative submission artists that I have ever seen, based on his last performance, and that is Roman Dolidze. He actually jumps between two weight divisions. He can fight in the light heavyweight division, and he can fight in the middleweight division. He has a solid wrestling background with 2 victories he makes in the UFC. He had 1 loss to Trevin Giles in 2001, but he made an overcoming comeback against Laureano Staropoli that put an end to that failure. From June to December of last year, the Caucasian produced an amazing run where he jumped into the top 10 in the middleweight division. Dolidze finished 3 races in a row, delivered 3 outstanding performances, and on March 18th, he's holding a big tournament in London, and Dolidze will share the octagon with Marvin Vettori, who's the number 4 ranked middleweight in the division. The Italian Marvin Vettori is a very tough test for Roman, but I just don't think he has the fight IQ for Roman. The submission of the calf slicer that Roman Dolidze did to Jack Hermansson just shows me his level of grappling. That was absolutely incredible. And I find Hermansson a very, very high level, respectable grappler. Anyone who knows grappling understands that Hermansson is up there when it comes to submission and fight IQ. I believe Marvin Vettori tries to grind down his opponents, and that will not be enough to go against Roman. Roman is going to put a standout performance, and I cannot wait to see him going against the champion now, and that's Alex Pereira. He is a big finisher. He called out Michael Bisping for saying that he was not knocking people out, and he's obviously showing not only he's knocking people out, he's finishing them in all types of ways. He is proving himself to be one of the top rising contenders, and he puts himself on the line each time. Like I said, none of these guys are trying to hide. They want the best, and thankfully Dana White and the matchmakers are giving them the best competition possible to show them on the biggest platform in the world. Roman is a very, very dangerous fighter, and I want you guys to keep and stay tuned for him. Very respectable guy, trains in AKA Extreme Couture, and one of his good training partner is Sergey Spivak, who is going to be fighting Derek the Black Beast Lewis on February 4th. So keep an eye on him. Spivak is coming in big against Derek Lewis. And one more shout out that I want to give. It's one of a young upcoming Georgian fighter. He is not in the UFC, but he just made his Bellator debut in 2021, which was unsuccessful, but he was able to overcome that setback with a victory. He's known as a lethal finisher, and after winning 9 out of 10 matches via knockout. The name is Chokaheli Levan. He's a 25-year-old, and he's fighting out of the welterweight division. I want you to keep an eye on him. He's fighting at a Bellator. And guys, if you have any more questions about any of the fighters, and we're going to be covering a lot more stuff from fighters from different regions, but I'll tell you, the Georgian fighters are here to stay, they're here to grow, and they're here to succeed. So enjoy the UFC, and I hope you learned a little bit about Georgia and the 5 UFC fighters that are currently rostered. Thank you so much. This is Mitchell from Fight Pass with Mitch. And remember to follow, like, and subscribe us on all platforms. Notorious Pool Radio. Thank you again, and see you soon.